I think last night what we saw in the Warriors-Celtics game is just the latest reminder as to why Steph Curry is the biggest change agent in NBA history. Look at how that game went. Curry has gotten the entire sport of basketball to model his game, to adopt his style of play. And I don't recall an athlete in any sport that I've ever seen do that. One guy changed the entire way the sport is played. But that is what Steph has done. And the latest reminder we got of it was just last night. Warriors' big time win over the Celtics in overtime. And a big reason why a beleaguered and bad Warriors team this year was able to beat Boston was because the Warriors were able to sucker the Celtics into playing the Steph model of basketball. They got them to play their own game. Boston attempted 58 threes yesterday, jacked up 58. Think about that. 58 attempts from three for the Boston Celtics. And it wasn't like they were hitting a ton either, right? It's not like you're taking a lot because you're making a lot. They made just 17. So they went 17 of 58 from three, made just 29% of their three-point attempts, and that is a big reason why we saw the Warriors hang in and then eventually beat the Celtics in overtime. They could not hit the three. And that was also, by the way, the 58 attempts are not just on the surface. Wow, they really tried to play the Warriors style of basketball and lost. It's also the fact that when you look at how the game played out, with just about halfway to go in the third quarter, Steph Curry picked up his fifth foul. And right, normal basketball logic would just say, okay, well, he's a superstar. He's got 5 fouls. We're just going to drive down the lane and try our best to just foul him out of the game. And now let's go play a Warriors team that's already without Draymond, and now we'll have to play without Steph for the final, whatever. Let's just say at least the fourth quarter. If you take the second half of the third quarter just to basically drive it down Steph's throat. And so think about that. Boston still jacked up a total of 58 threes, despite the fact that Steph was in foul trouble for a good part of that second half in overtime. They got enamored with the three ball. They got enamored with playing the Steph Curry style of basketball, and it came back to bite them right there. That is Steph's doing. That is him truly changing the team philosophy on how they approach the game of basketball. And again, I don't know another player that I've ever seen change the game the way Steph has, which is why I think the more we watch him, we have to realize not only we're watching greatness, right? It's obvious. Steph is one of the best players to ever play the game. But he's also, I think, been the most impactful. He's been the biggest change agent we've ever seen play this game. Like, LeBron is great. LeBron is an overall better player than Steph. But LeBron hasn't changed the game. Right? Like how teams play is not different now compared to when LeBron got in the league because of what he did well. Same thing with Michael Jordan. Overall better player, I would argue, than Steph. But Michael never changed the way teams played the game. Like, both LeBron and MJ were just so damn good, so talented, so unstoppable that they played to the modern NBA. Like, they played to the way the rules were. They played the same style everyone else was playing. They were just better. They were just unstoppable. And that's why they are two of the greatest players of all time. But with Steph, it's not only that he's a great player, but his three-point attack, barrage, if you will, and how the Warriors changed their way of playing had a ripple effect throughout the rest of the NBA, and I would argue in the rest of just the sport of basketball. Go to an AAU basketball game. Go to a 7th grade basketball game. Go to a high school basketball game. Everyone now is shooting the three ball. Steph has single-handedly changed the way the game is played. And I thought it was just evidence last night. 5 fouls, normal basketball protocol says, go after him, get him out. And instead you see Boston chuck up 3 after 3 after 3, brick after brick after brick. They got suckered into playing the Steph style of basketball. Just like really the rest of the NBA has. And that's why they fell on the losing end. No player at least in modern NBA history here, has changed the entire sport the way Steph has. Again, we told you 58 threes from the Celtics last night. They're second all time. Second most three-point attempts in their long and storied history we saw last night. And I was going through the stats today just to see, like, where does it rank? Where was the most attempts? They were one short. They had 59 against the Knicks last year for most three-point attempts in NBA history. But just to also highlight my point about Steph, it's not just one game. I was going through, and again, the Celtics have a long, right, storied history. A lot of great teams, a lot of great players. But you look at the most three-point attempts in their history. The top 25 games, or the 25 games, I should say, they've taken the most three-point attempts, have all been within the last 7 years. So all a recent trend. And that recent trend, I think we can directly tie back to one Steph Curry. Right? It's not like they're shooting these threes in the 80s and the 90s, and now sprinkled in here and there. Yeah, there's a 55, three-point ball attempt game they've had. The top 25 three-point attempt games for the Celtics in their history have all come the last 7 years, which is one example from one team. But it shows a bigger point of the teams now are prioritizing and focusing on the three ball in large part because Steph has changed the game or changed the way the game has been played. It's truly incredible. Like, if you think about it too, just beyond basketball, is there any other player in any other sport in the modern era? We're not going to go back to the 20s or the 30s here, even the 40s. But like, since these leagues have truly been established the way we know them now, has there been any single player that has changed the way the game is played more than Steph? Or even equal to Steph? Like, Tom Brady is, again, in the, like, if we're talking about greatest of all time, Tom Brady's that, just like LeBron and MJ, whoever you want. I don't really care to argue it, to be honest. But whoever you want to pick out of those two, fine, have your debate, have your argument. But that's greatest of all time. But LeBron, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, like, they didn't change the way their sport was played. Like, look how the NFL is played now. It is more of a passing league. Can we say Tom Brady made it that way? No. The rules made it that way. The talent made it that way. And the fact that you have, in terms of eliteness, right, the quarterback is the position where you have the fewest elite players. So the gap between when you have a franchise quarterback, an elite quarterback, compared to when you don't, it's felt, it's wide. And that's why I think, like, you can't just say, oh, Tom Brady changed the way the NFL is played, or even Patrick Mahomes, how great he is. How Mahomes is playing now is not how the game is being played because of him, right? He's great. But now we're not throwing the ball more because of Mahomes. Or now we're not going more of a scramble prototype quarterback because of one guy. Trends happen, but they don't happen because of one player in the NFL. Barry Bonds, like Mike Trout, great players. But they didn't change the way baseball was played. Like, I would argue analytics, if you want to talk about one specific thing that changed baseball, it's a computer. It's not a player. It's data. It's the numbers. So it's like, if you think about it in other sports, like, there is no single player at least, that has really changed the actual way the sport is played, like the actual style of how a sport is played. And you come to the NBA, there's no other player that's changed the way the game is played right now more than Steph. Like, he has literally changed how we watch basketball. To me, he's the most impactful player in NBA history. I'm not saying the best, but there's been no bigger change agent in the entire sport, in honestly any sport at this point, if you just go beyond basketball, than what Steph Curry has done right now to change the way the NBA is played. And that's why I was seeing after the game last night, NBA and TNT, it's fascinating to hear now how other greats view the greatness of Steph Curry. Like, Shaq was on the postgame show last night. I think, like, part of what he saw from the Celtics and how they played, and part of what you see from Steph Curry, leads Shaq, all-time great player, to give out an all-time great compliment to one Steph Curry.
I'm wondering, not saying, I'm just wondering, because he's been the best shooter his whole career. I'm wondering if the time to start putting him as the best player of all time.
Best player? Oh, you put him over you?
In the conversation.
I'm asking you.
Yes.
You put him over you? You yourself. Steph Curry over you.
Yeah, this way he's my favorite player.
I'm not saying favorite. He might be my favorite too. I'm just asking you, think he's better than me?
I played 20 years, watched 20 years before that. I've never seen a guy like him. And he's doing it consistently, and he has championships.
Like, that's not just me saying it, or someone who's a fan, someone who watches the game. Shaq has a lot of clout. He's got every word he says, right? It means a lot from what he did both in a dominant perspective on the court and now the perspective he brings to the NBA on TNT studio. Like, for him to call Steph one of the best in his mind and thinks he should be in the GOAT conversation should not be taken lightly. I personally wouldn't put him in there. Again, I think LeBron overall, better player. MJ overall, better player. But I think the reason why Shaq is even thinking and considering of putting right now Steph in that category is because of what he's watching and how the game is played single-handedly, I should say, because of Steph. You can easily give him right now the credit for changing the way the game is played with how he shot the three ball. And again, we saw last night. Dagger. Sends the Celtics to bed. Quick 3-point release. End of overtime. Game over. Records on all the 3-point records, right, are his. He's insane. He is one of the best shooters. I would argue maybe the best shooter I've ever seen in my lifetime. But now as you, again, really start to take a step back here and appreciate his greatness, we can discuss GOAT, where he ranks all time. But to me, there's no debate. When it comes to who has been the most impactful player in NBA history, who has been the biggest change agent in the sport of basketball, it's hands down, no argument, Steph Curry.